Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken?
Hey, Kiernan.
Hello, Ryan. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, I mean, right off the bat, I want to do the Judy alert. I got to ask, where are you so that I and your mother, Judy, know how to contact you in the case of an emergency?
I'm in Puerto Vallarta.
Puerto Vallarta. Okay. And how long are you based there for?
I'm here for the week, and then I'm back to Bogota.
What exactly is the approach you're taking these days? Are you doing weeks in different places? You doing weekend trips? Like, what is home? What's home base?
Bogota's sort of home base for now. Yeah,
sort of home base. Okay.
Yeah. I can
real estate. Do you have an apartment there?
I do have an apartment there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I actually just flew in last night from Puerto Escondido, where we would not have been able to record the pod because the internet doesn't exist there. In any real way. Like, I had fine internet at the Airbnb, actually, good enough to do video calls, but not good enough for the high intense software we need to record this podcast.
Well, just a little peek behind the curtain here. Well, Ryan and I are done with podcasting software. The nightmare, the hours and hours we've wasted trying to talk via the internet is just shocking to me.
Yeah, in 2024, you think it would be easier to talk on the internet, but
and then recent guest Fred Plotkin said to me, I record an NPR quality show on Zoom. For what reason are you making me use this fucking thing? He didn't say fucking. I meant fucking. This fucking thing called Cast. I'm like, you know what? You're right. So we're on Zoom. I hope the audio is as high quality as Cast. I don't know why we were wasting the money, Ryan.
Yeah, well, we are on Zoom now, so we'll see how it goes. This morning, I think we did okay.
There was a little bit of getting used to it, getting the Zoom pants on, one microphone at a time, or however you want to say it. I'm sure if it's not high quality enough, we're definitely going to hear about it in our reviews, which have really kicked up in volume, right?
Yeah, we've got a couple review shout outs today before we jump into the meat and potatoes of the episode, which is on travel planning with AI.
This one's fraught, Ryan. I think this one is very fraught. I'm a big fan of guidebooks, traditional media. Yeah. I like experts. I like Rick Steves. I like Fromers. I like
AI steals from all those and more. You know?
Well, you're gonna. I know. I'm open-minded, but I am gonna be the skeptic here, because I know that you are one who you adopt every new technology. Your robot overlords say bend over. You will be bent. You will be the first one.
You don't even know that this is me. This could be an AI generation version of me. I'm still asleep. It's 8 a.m. here in Puerto Vallarta. Who knows if I am, if this is me.
The Ryan Davis AI would just be programmed. Like, name any city in South America when asked where you are. Claim that you have a real profession.
But reviews, a couple quick shout outs to Kay Gordon, who gave us 5 stars and says, love it the best. And a really nice review from P. Malones. P. Malones?
Yes, you're spending too much time with those. This is definitely P. Malone, not P. Malones. And you're getting the Spanish pronunciation. Yeah. I'm very impressed, Ryan. So why don't you actually read this in Spanish? You can translate it as you go along.
I can't do that. But this is a deep cut. This is a listener who opens with a tagline that we considered 15 years ago when we were starting this podcast.
Pack your bags, Buster Brown. This guy's listened to the full catalog.
This guy or gal? You think it's a guy?
Good point. I'm not sure. Yes, I'm picking up a masculine air here.
All right. Well, this was a great review. So thank you, P. Malones, for this. Pack your bags, Buster Brown. They love learning about new destinations and getting travel recommendations and the balance of international and domestic. We've got some more domestic coming up this year, which is going to be fun. And people seem to think that we're like friends, so we've done something right.
Despite the previous bad review we got where we were the most boring men, well, maybe that's why we get along, because we're the most boring men on earth.
Yeah, maybe we're both boring enough that we get along.
But what I like to think really binds us together is woke hatred.
Yes. So we did get a 1-star review from Cornhusker 55.
See, now right there, really, I feel this deeply because we've really been trying to make inroads with our red state friends. And,
I don't know what episode they were listening to that triggered them.
I don't know. But Cornhusker 55, he threw the cob right at us.
Yeah, tough to listen to the woke hatred on this podcast. Sad, really, just awful.
And he titled it with one of my favorite words, brutal.
Yeah, brutal, yeah.
It's how you and I have described most experiences, brutal and a nightmare.
Yeah, if it's a nightmare, I would have been like, this guy should be perfect. This is definitely a guy, by the way.
No question. No question. And now here's a question. I have a theory here, which is how often we've talked about, one of my favorite songs of all time, Richmond, North of Richmond. In fact, maybe we could just get a quick clip. We haven't listened to that howl that just makes the pain that I feel existentially truly come into being. Let's give a quick listen.
I've been selling my soul, working all day.
See, I mean, I think Cornhusker 55 thinks that I'm talking about that in jest, but Ryan, I listen to this song all the time. I'm not mocking it.
No, you love that song. I really like that song too. And he just made his debut at the Grand Ole Opry a couple weeks ago, which is super exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Playing all his greatest hits.
That one.
Richmond, North of Richmond, Kiefer Sutherland, south of this land.
I haven't gone deeper in the catalog, but yeah, no. So Cornhusker, we're going to do our best.
We are Mitt Romney Democrats here.
I think that's totally fair to say. Mike Pence, Democrat.
I mean, on the woke scale, I don't see us as far woke.
No, I don't think this is. I think just that's woke being used pejoratively. I don't think that it's a
pejoratively. That's right. Yeah. That's right. I mean, okay, we do like Mitt Romney, but you and I, we grew up. We're Obama Democrats. Which that he is not where the woke.
No,
is.
he's always he's always telling people to relax a little bit. So
I mean, he's doing a lot of relaxing as post presidency. It was the last time we've seen Obama do anything useful. I mean, you got Jimmy Carter. He's still out there, building houses, and making peanut butter.
Well, the Obamas are influencers. It takes a lot of their time these days. Hopefully, we'll see a little Obama.
I am disappointed. You know what? This is for Cornhusker 55. Yeah. I am disappointed in the Obama post presidency.
You want more Obama? It's been complicated,
It's not complicated. The key to it is you follow the Al Gore playbook. You follow the Jimmy Carter playbook. You pick.
Al Gore was never president, believe it or not.
But he made a big difference in the world. He's got that Nobel Peace Prize, Ryan. Last time I checked, you haven't gotten that Nobel Peace Prize yet. And you pick one issue that you're going to own and make an actual difference on. That's what I feel that the post-presidency should be.
And you don't think Obama's pick of golfing is as strong as
he's spreading himself very thin. He's producing shows on Netflix nobody watches. He's got a podcast. I mean, if you've got a podcast, you're over.
He should come on the pod and talk about his national parks podcast, his national parks show.
Even I didn't watch that national park show. I mean, that is like really saying something. I'm Obama obsessed. I'm national parks obsessed. But I saw the teaser for it. I was like, I feel like it's kind of Ken Burns kind of covered this.
All right, so we've given Obama his due, and Cornhusker is sitting there going like, oh my gosh. But I do want to give a shout out before we get into the generative AI component of the episode to Andres, who is a fan of ours and follows us on the old OOO podcast on Instagram.
Podcast, like podcast, like out
podcast.
Of office podcast, and you can always just slip right into those DMs. So we'll talk to you.
Yeah, so he reached out and said that he was initially skeptical of the Broadway episode, and then he
like so many of our fans. Very
exactly.
unpopular episode, very unpopular.
But then he met and fell in love with a girl who loves theater, and he used that podcast to score some Broadway tickets to Aladdin. And he says, "I can't thank you guys enough for that episode."
Do you think this might be Leah Michelle's husband? A girl. I fell in love with a girl who loves theater. That sounds like Leah Michelle.
It could. Then again, Leah Michelle wouldn't be that concerned about getting discount tickets to Broadway show.
Post Glee, does she really hold any sway?
She just she was just the star of something on Broadway. Funny girl. Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
Funny girl.
Yeah. So, Andres, congratulations. Go see a bunch more shows. What's a good romantic
We would
musical?
love to know, Andres, if your theater-loving wife is also a listener.
Yeah, well, she should be. She's gotten a shout-out now. So if he's not too embarrassed, maybe he'll share this episode with her. And, it's always a good idea to share Out of Office with your loved ones. It makes a great gift.
I mean, the thing that struck me about Andres was he was very clear. He said, I was one of the people that was scoff at the Broadway episode.
Yeah.
So he wasn't a fan either.
No. And
but for all those single listeners out here, Cornhusker 55, I'm looking at you. That episode might unlock love.
Yeah. When the Broadway shows are coming through Lincoln, make sure to take take somebody out. But
okay,
look,
Ryan, last question before we take off and AI takes over. If you had a red stater acquaintance coming to New York, and you could recommend any Broadway show to them, anything that's been in existence, what Broadway show is a good recommendation for a red stater?
I think there've been quite a few over the years. Oklahoma's always a favorite.
Very good, especially if they're from Oklahoma.
Most definitely if they're from Oklahoma. The Johnny Cash musical was good fun.
Can I make a pitch?
Yeah.
1776.
Yeah, but it has to be not a woke production. Like it has to be
not a woke production, and it's got to be a production that restores a song that they cut out of the movie adaptation. It's a song called "Cool, Cool Conservative Men." Do you know that song?
I do, because you brought it up on the podcast.
I love "Cool, Cool Conservative Men." Let's listen to a quick clip. This is for Cornhusker 55. Get you back in the out of office camp. Cool, cool conservative men.
Come ye cool, cool, conservative men. Our like may never ever be seen again.
That should be what the Republicans pay at the presidential convention this year.
It is about as cool as
probably be playing Jailhouse Rock. Am I right?
I think
Cornhusker.
I think with that, it's time to take off.
Tell the cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
All right. So, Kiernan, the premise for this episode is I'm going to use ChatGPT to plan a couple weekends in cities that you know really well. And I'm going to read the recommendations. And I've asked it all for the same thing. Right? I'm asking it for a 3-day weekend in this city, covering the greatest hits.
Just in case any of our listeners aren't super well acquainted with AI, ChatGPT, can you just give a sense of what this technology is and how it can be used for travel?
Sure. So that's a great idea, Kiernan. And after this sort of like little experiment, I'm going to go into some tips on how to do it better. But essentially, ChatGPT and DALL-E and the Google version and the Microsoft version and all these different apps are text prompts where you can ask questions. So you can say, what is the most important thing to see when you're in Seattle, right? And it will give you some ideas for that. Or, what should I do for a weekend in Baltimore? Baltimore's on my mind because of the horrible bridge collapse today.
It's just. Did you
crazy
see the video?
It looks like it just melts away. It's
and you got a giant tanker hitting the main base of it. I mean, it's not built for that.
No, that's a very serious artery there in Maryland. But yeah, so the back and forth, but it's conversational. It's like chatting with a friend who has, doesn't have much of a personality, but a friend who knows a lot of stuff very confidently, but might be wrong, as we'll talk about today. So, you can use this for free at OpenAI. Just Google it, and you can open up a free account and get started. And there's some pluses and minuses to using ChatGPT for your travel, planning companion, which we'll talk about today. But I think it would be fun to sort of kick off with just some basic recommendations from cities that Kiernan, and you'd given us a score. How well did ChatGPT do, with this planning? So we're going to start with Boston. Boston very well. You've got a book coming out, literally a book. You wrote the book on Boston.
I wrote a book on Boston, May 29th, I think, Secret Boston. I noticed Barnes & Noble already has it up for pre-order.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'll put a link in the show notes. So maybe this will, sound familiar because you just wrote this book. But, again, a 3-day weekend in Boston. So imagine it's Friday. We're arriving. It wants us to start the day with a walk along the Freedom Trail, a 2.5-mile route that takes you through 16 historical sites, including Boston Common, the State House, and Paul Revere's house. It's a great way to immerse yourself in the city's rich history. Now, don't react to every one of these because it'll take forever, so let's go through day one.
Okay.
Have lunch at the Quincy Market, which has a variety of food options. In the afternoon, visit the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum to learn about the American Revolution. Then head to the North End, Boston's oldest residential community, known for its Italian heritage and the home of Old North Church. And finally, have dinner in the North End, referred to as Boston's Little Italy, and choose from numerous authentic Italian restaurants. So I think that seems like a really packed day to me. But what was
the exact prompt you gave it?
So the prompt is a 3-day weekend. So I've got 3 days. That was day one.
That was day one. Okay, day one.
Yeah. So hold your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm holding.
Yeah.
I'm holding.
So we're into day two. Day two, that we're going to focus on culture and science. In the morning, we're going to go to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Then we're going to go to lunch and grab a bite in the Fenway area. In the afternoon, we're going to go to the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. That's a great choice, in my opinion. And then spend some time in the Boston Public Gardens, which is America's first public botanical garden that has famous swan boats. And then we're going to dine in Back Bay. And then on the third and the last day, we're going to start at the Boston Public Library to admire its architecture and art. And then we're going to go to Newbury Street for some shopping and people watching. Then we're going to have lunch on Newbury Street. In the afternoon, we're going to visit the Institute of Contemporary Art, and then explore the Seaport District afterwards with its waterfront views and modern architecture. And then conclude our trip with dinner at a waterfront restaurant in the Seaport District. So what do you think? What do you think of that 3-day itinerary? Is that too much? Is it just right? Is it missing something? Where does that fall? What grade would you give that?
I would give it a B. I would give it a solid B. It's pretty good. It's pretty good for like a first timer. Is it realistic? The amount of things it's asking me to squeeze in 3 days? Yes, I do think it's realistic. Okay, that's interesting.
Didn't
sound like too much because it was grouping it geographically.
Yeah.
So to go from, for example, Quincy Market into North End and Old North Church, and that's like right next to each other. And so it's a 10-minute walk in between. So it was grouping things geographically. When it brought you over to Fenway and then it brought you back to the Boston Public Gardens, that's a little bit longer. But again, like it's all fairly close proximity. But in a way, that's where it's losing me, is that I do think that when you ask these tools specifically for like that city guide, they're not considering the attractions that are like outside of the geographic region of the city of Boston.
And that's one of the things we'll get to in some of the notes. Like you can the more specific you can be about what you're looking for, you can get more interesting suggestions. Although I have found that sometimes when you poke it for too interesting a suggestion, it will just make one up. Because it'll be like, well, I can't make this guy happy, you know.
Well, this is actually, so my other criticism, what's getting it a B, is that it does feel very generic. And frankly, you know, you and I have been to that Paul Revere house together.
Yeah.
We think that's a waste of time. And so I think it's in the quality of your prompt. I don't know. You didn't ask for the best places to visit. Maybe that could have helped.
No, this is basically grading like a first time visit to a city over 3 days.
I mean, where it's sending you in 3 days that are a waste of time in Boston, our Paul Revere house, and that Boston Tea Party Museum is not a good one. And so,
but the Stuart Gardner Museum is great. The Museum of Fine Arts is a must.
Arts is great. Yeah, right. Like those, it's knocking out of the park. But it's not having you like go take a walk along the Charles River. It seems like it's underselling like walks in nature a little bit, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it has you go for a walk in the Fenway area and in Newbury Street, but yeah, it doesn't.
I mean, but those are the most touristy places. Like that's like
you're just upset because
it's sending you to Times Square.
You're just upset because it doesn't send you to HBS to stroll the beautiful campus.
I'm not sending people to HBS, but I do think that it's a major miss that it's not telling you Harvard, it's not telling you MIT, and it's also not telling you the Public Gardens is good, Boston Commons is good. The Arnold Arboretum is this incredible nature reserve right in Boston. And I really think that's the place I would send somebody on a 3-day weekend. So, you know,
generic.
A B. It's a B.
Okay. So this second one is a city that you know pretty well, and that's London.
Yes, I know London.
So,
I haven't written a book on London.
Yeah, not yet.
I spent a year in London. I've probably traveled there for work 10, 15 times.
Yeah. So we've landed in London. It's very early in the morning, and they want us to start our first day with the majestic changing of the guard ceremony at Buckingham Palace. Arrive early to secure a good viewing spot. And then have lunch at a classic British lunch.
If there are any royals left, you know?
Oh, I know.
It's not good.
Poor Kate.
It's
poor
not
Kate.
Good. Poor Kate. Poor Charles. The whole thing's falling apart.
Yeah, the whole thing. It's a sad
We're gonna
days
be
over
left
there.
with fucking Harry. We're gonna be left with Harry.
Harry's always been my favorite. So
no. Oh, fine. I mean, I know you're both fond of wearing Nazi uniforms. I've seen the picture, folks. Ryan was in Sound of Music. No, not that. Sound of Music. That's
it is Sound of Music. Yeah,
right. Sound of Music.
Well, there are Nazis in Sound of Music, and I was acting as one. Cornhusker will enjoy that little bit of.
and Andre's girlfriend's probably going to be really into that.
So we've done the changing of the guard. We're doing a British lunch at a nearby pub with a traditional dish like fish and chips or a pie. In the afternoon, we're going to visit the Houses of Parliament and the iconic Big Ben. But if possible, book a tour inside the House of Commons and the House of Lords and stroll along the south bank of the Thames to enjoy vibrant street performances and views of the London Eye. And then it wants us to, in the evening, experience the London Eye for breathtaking city views and reserve a table for dinner at one of South Bank's riverside restaurants. Now, the London Eye, that's at like... the
giant Ferris wheel.
The giant Ferris wheel, yeah, blah, blah. Day 2, culture and history. Explore the British Museum, a vast collection of world art and artifacts, including the Rosetta Stone and somebody's marbles. Have lunch. Elgin, the Elgin marbles.
The Elgin, yeah.
Elgin, yeah.
Yeah.
Have lunch in Bloomsbury.
Those are the ones that Greece wants back.
Oh, well, give them to Greece.
Yeah.
That would take somebody's marbles. Have lunch in Bloomsbury.
Well, they're not marbles. They're sculptures. They're sculptures, right?
Okay. I'm imagining just like, you know.
Do you genuinely not know this?
No, I don't know what that is. No, I mean, I've been to the British Museum. I've been many times.
These are the marbles from the Parthenon.
Oh, the columns.
No, they're not columns.
They're not columns. They're marbles.
No, they're great sculptures that show a battle, and they have a whole
exciting
room.
Yeah.
And in fact, in Athens, they have a museum that was specially built to bring them back. And it's just, this is true. And it's just sitting there with the space for all of the marbles to be returned to the British Museum.
That is amazing. A former client at the British Museum, so I don't have anything bad to say about him.
No.
So we're having lunch in Bloomsbury, and then in the afternoon, we're going to go to the Tower of London to learn about the city's rich history and see the crown jewels, the marbles and the crown jewels. London's got a theme here. Afterwards, we're going to walk across the Tower Bridge for stunning architectural views. And in the evening, we're going to dine in the Shoreditch area because it's eclectic food scene. Mm-hmm. And then it says consider catching a show or performance in the evening. So they've got a packed day. And then the very last day focused on parks and shopping. Begin your day at Hyde Park, one of London's largest and most famous green spaces, and rent a pedal boat there. Have lunch at Harrods in Knightsbridge in one of their exquisite food halls. Followed by some window shopping. It assumes you don't have any money, I guess. In this,
they're like, "Is this Ryan?"
Window shopping. Spend your afternoon in Covent Garden, known for its shops and street performers, and the Royal Opera House. And then for your final evening, have a leisurely dinner in one of Covent Garden's many restaurants. And then, if interested, catch a West End show to end your trip on a high note.
Okay. All right.
What do you say? What's the grade?
This one's harder. I'm okay. I think it did a pretty good job, but it's missing a few really big ones. So I'm going to give it a C+.
C+. What? No. What is it missing?
So it's missing Westminster Abbey.
That sprang to my mind too. Westminster Abbey.
It's bizarre that it's very bizarre that it's. So I think it's a good recommendation to try to book a tour of the House of Parliament and House of Commons. But if you're on your first trip and you have a 3-day weekend, chances are you're not doing that tour. That's like a considerably more obscure tour, and you're right there when you're going and seeing Big Ben. You're seeing the House of Parliament. Westminster Abbey's right there, and it didn't bring you to St. Paul's Cathedral. I mean, not to just harp on two churches, but those are like two of the most famous churches in the world.
Yeah, it doesn't bring you. It doesn't even mention either of them. And I'm scanning the copy. Yeah, it doesn't even mention them.
Yeah, and then where I do think it hit a lot of the major stuff. I would have liked if there was another couple of museum suggestions. I think the British Museum is like such a. I mean that yes, you got to go to there, but there's hundreds of museums, and not just because I'm like an obsessive about the obscure museums, but there's really many great museums there. And I think it was a real miss to suggest theater 2 nights in a row. I mean, there's so much going on in London that why would you repeat that suggestion?
Yeah, I mean, what would you say in the evening though? Like, I mean,
what I would probably suggest, like one. I mean, obviously, there's a major difference between Boston and London, but London is such a huge city with so many neighborhoods. I mean, because Greater London, especially, which they'll still call London broadly, it has ethnic enclaves and interesting, really quirky little neighborhoods with special restaurants and neighborhood places. What I would say is you venture out of the central London, which is really where this one's keeping you. God, it didn't have the Tate Modern, Ryan.
It didn't have the Tate Modern.
It has you walking on the South Bank. It doesn't tell you to go to Shakespeare's Globe, and it doesn't tell you to go to Tate Modern. I honestly,
but you're seeing 2 shows, so you can't have time. You don't have time. 2 shows,
right? No, actually, I'm going to knock it down. Not taking Tate Modern out doesn't tell you the National Gallery, National Portrait,
the Portrait Gallery. Yeah,
you didn't go to the Winston Churchill War Rooms. I mean, honestly, I'm going to knock this one down to a C. And you're in the areas where you could hit more of these. If anything, the Boston one felt like it's packing things in. London feels like maybe a little loose. And for sure, I would definitely recommend some of these cultural institutions before I would recommend Covent Garden.
Yeah.
Before I would recommend Covent Garden, which is perfectly nice, but is not a must see.
Okay. Well, I actually agree with you that the Boston one was more on the mark than the London one. So this final one though is gonna really. This is a city you, I think, know better than I do. It's Seattle.
Yeah, Seattle. So I'll give so Boston. I live here. I've written a book on here. It's Boston. I think it's fair to say I'm near expert on. London, I think I would say I'm near expert. I had not enough to have written a book, but I've done the big stuff. I've done a ton of the obscure stuff. Seattle is one where it's more cursory. I've been there twice. Once was sort of I had just enough time to do the big stuff, and then the second time able to dig in a little more. And actually, Ryan, we're recording right now when my wife Catherine is actually on a plane to Seattle at this very moment. Isn't that ironic?
That is so ironic. She's been traveling. She's traveling a lot lately.
Work's got her on the road.
I should get her on the pod.
So I am hoping that you're going to tell me something that's so good that I'm going to be able to say, text her right now. When you land, I want you to head right here.
All right. So 3-day weekend, Seattle. In the morning, begin your Seattle adventure at the Pike Place Market. Start early to see the market come to life. And don't miss the original Starbucks. And be sure to watch the famous fish throwers. Okay, let's not make fun of it yet, okay?
No, listen, that's in every guidebook. I mean, that's acceptable.
Grab lunch at one of the many eateries at the Pike Place Market, and you can find everything from fresh seafood to international dishes. So you're spending a lot of time at the Pike Place Market. You're there all morning, and then you're having lunch there. Okay.
All right, no commentary. But you're right. It's great as sinking.
Yeah. Take a stroll along the Seattle waterfront. Visit the Seattle Aquarium, or take a ride on the Great Wheel for spectacular views of the city and the Sound. In the evening, dine at one of the waterfront restaurants or explore the culinary scene in the nearby Belltown neighborhood. So that's day one. That's pretty light day.
That's not a ton to do right there.
Yeah. Day two. Visit the Space Needle early to beat the crowds. The observation deck offers panoramic views of Seattle and beyond. So you've seen Seattle from multiple angles at this point because you're already on that other thing. And have lunch at the Armory in Seattle Center, where you have a variety of food options. Spend your afternoon exploring the museums around Seattle Center, including the Museum of Pop Culture and Chihuly Gardens and Glass.
Okay, that was a big one I was waiting for. I'm glad that it's in there.
Anytime there's a Chihuly, you can't miss that. And then in the evening, explore the Capital District for dinner. It's known for its diverse culinary scene and vibrant nightlife. We're already at day three.
Wow, they're flying by.
Yeah, start a visit to the Washington Park Arboretum or the Japanese Garden for a peaceful morning surrounded by nature. Have lunch in the University District, a variety of affordable and tasty options. Spend the afternoon in Fremont, the self-proclaimed center of the universe. Visit the Fremont Troll. Browse local shops and quirky art installations. And finally, for your last evening, consider visiting Ballard for dinner. The neighborhood's famous for its Scandinavian heritage. And finish your trip with the sunset view at the Golden Gardens Park overlooking the Sound. A lot of time overlooking the Sound here. Each day you're taking in the Sound. So what do you think of that?
It didn't mention Pioneer Square.
No.
This is a D. Maybe a D plus. C minus. I'll be generous. It's a C minus, but it's a very strange one. So when you asked me for destinations, I specifically tried to choose a place that is a place where I've spent enough time that just a little beyond a 3-day weekend, So I know like the things that you want to hit in that time. And one, you are dead on. Even as someone, have you been to Seattle, Ryan?
Yeah, I have quite a few times. Yeah.
Oh, so you do. So you know it well. You understood like the amount of time it's having you spend at each of the places seems insane. Like it's not. You're going to have a lot of time, and it doesn't even recommend go out and have coffee at that time. It's one of the great coffee cities, cafe cities.
Well, no, you go to the Starbucks, and
but you should go to the you go to the Starbucks just to say you went to the first one, but you don't drink the Starbucks.
No, well, you're spending all morning at the fish market and afternoon. You have time to have coffee.
Right. In that market, like you're in and out of there in 30 minutes, you know. I do think it's in touch with the fact that the waterfront is one of the primary attractions and is lovely. It does seem to send you there a lot. It does. It's to me, it also suffers from like it doesn't send you out on a boat. If I'm right,
no boats. Yeah, and I've taken a boat out on that sound that people are looking at in this trip, and it's lovely.
And there's lots of good like food and walking in. If you take the ferries out, you can go to Bainbridge Island or Bremerton, which are like local places that you can take the ferry to. And obviously getting out on the water is like one of the best ways to see back on the city too. And then it didn't talk about Pioneer Square, which is a really like quirky old downtown area. And they have like some historical tours and things that leave from there that I think would have been valuable to mention. Gosh, I just felt like it was missing like a lot of stuff.
I think this was the weakest of all the.
You know what it didn't? This one's another one that I think because it's bounded by the city limits. Just outside Seattle is one of the great factory tours. You can go on the Boeing factory tour.
And now that's an exciting tour.
They give you a door plug as just for visiting. They just rip it right off the plane. They hand it to you. No, I mean, joking aside, it really is. I mean, to go into one of these incredibly massive warehouses where they're building, 6 airplanes at a time and see an airplane and just the innards, the wiring, the piping. I mean, it's an incredible process. One of the best factory industrial tours I've been on. Because of how much time it's giving you, it's just insane to me that it doesn't recommend that. And then one thing that was really missing from all three, I would say, is there's really no focus on like restaurants or culinary gems.
Well, so let's jump into some of the ways I think you can use this better, because we'll get to that. The first is, I think this really functions on its best at a high level, giving you an idea what's possible to do within the time that you're there. So your first comment about Boston, I totally works for me. Like it groups things by neighborhoods, and I found this really useful when I was in Buenos Aires and I was trying to plan things by the major neighborhoods that I was going to be visiting. And so I actually used it to just generate lists, and you have to kind of push it. It's like, give me 5 more places, give me 5 more places. And it's because it'll try to, so feel free to do that. It does understand in a weird way, like how long some things take. The Seattle one, obviously, I think, didn't hit the mark there, but
can I just say one of the other things on the Seattle one? It's funny because it includes one thing in there that is like I'm like shocked it's in there and I can't figure out why. It mentions the Fremont Troll.
Yeah, right? I love the Fremont Troll. Yeah.
Do you know what that is?
No, I don't know what that is.
That's this like obscure public sculpture that's under a highway. It's like under an underpass. It's the sort of shit that like I would seek out, but if you only have 3 days, it is like definitely not on the top of that list. It's like a giant troll emerging from the land that's like holding a Volkswagen car.
I think I've seen a photo of that in like weird Seattle or something.
It's a real like Atlas Obscura.
Yeah.
What a weird, like it's telling you that, but it's not telling you Pioneer Square. I mean, that's its priorities are very strange.
Yeah. you can poke and prod it to give you specific, what are some underseen things, some underknown things, use various phrasing like that, and try to get it to give you some better ideas. But be really careful, because I have tried to use this to find places where it's made things up. And so specifically in Bogota, I was asking it for a list of places that Bolivar was connected to. And it gave me a list, and I said, is there anything else? And then it felt the need to lie to me, because it knew that I wanted to, something I hadn't done. And it came up with this house that he had stayed at. When I looked, I couldn't find it on Google anywhere. I'm like, that's unusual. And then I went back to ChatGPT and I'm like, I can't find this. And it's like, you're right, this doesn't exist. So it can do this thing called hallucinate, where it will make things up. So if it sounds too good to be true, verify that. Do
you have an example?
It's the one I just gave you, the Boulevard. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So if it sounds too good to be true, you should definitely, before you do anything on these lists, verify that it's still a thing, because the data can be from, it can be old, it can be wrong, and that it's still open, etc. That's really important. Another thing is, you just mentioned, it doesn't know anything about restaurants. You can get it to give you specific restaurant recommendations, but it's always going to be a few years old. It's going to be drawing from publicly available data, and it's not nearly as good as using Eater, Michelin, World's Best, James Beard, other ways that we've talked about in terms of finding good restaurants. It's going to recommend like the place with the most hits on Google. It's going to be like, you got to visit, this. It's not going to go deep in the dining scene or come up with anything eclectic or interesting. I have found it to be really useful in figuring out trips around a place. So for instance, when I was in Buenos Aires, I was trying to figure out where do people go that, for a beach setting that you can get to close to Buenos Aires. I read a bunch of articles, and I kind of went to ChatGPT, and I asked it a couple of times, and it ended up giving me a list with pretty accurate travel times of places that you can go outside of Buenos Aires. So the outside day trip thing, it has some kind of interesting ideas around that, and can be useful. What's a good day trip out of Boston is a decent prompt to give it. But yeah, so that's sort of the 101 on travel planning. Did it do better or worse, about the same as you thought it was going to do, Kiernan?
Well, I think it's telling that it was kind of all over the place. I mean, among the three, first of all, those were three really good destinations to test it on, because it really hit and miss in different ways. I think it probably it performed about as well as I thought it would, where I thought it would miss a few things, and then maybe some oddities would get in there. And, most of my experience with AI has been not with the word generation, but using it for art and design.
Right.
We only have one artist on the marketing staff at my job. And so we have used a few AI images, things that you would end up paying a freelancer a couple $100s to do. It can do in about 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's weird how the images sometimes they're 90% there, but then it has a third eye or an arm coming out of a place you didn't expect. And I feel like these itineraries are hitting some of those same kind of snags where it's almost there. It almost feels like somebody who knows what they're doing. And then it'll throw in some odd wrench. But to me, that's what makes this, you would never say that you should use it alone in isolation.
No, not at all.
Itinerary.
No.
You got to double check all this stuff.
Yeah, no, this is idea generating. I think that's where it's at. It's the best. It just gives you a list of stuff, and then, but as we always recommend, you should really be diverse in the way that you plan a trip.
Well, and one more piece that I could weigh in on is when writing Secret Boston, I needed to come up with at least 120 obscure destinations, and not just a little obscure, really obscure stuff.
The Cheers bar, did that make it?
So I'm shocked ChatGPT didn't recommend that. So by the time I got to like, location 100, I was really starting to like need to dig deep into the archives. And I did go to ChatGPT and ask, what obscure sites are there in Boston? What obscure museums in the Boston area? A couple different takes like that. And it really didn't deliver on that. So
I think when you're past 100, it's not going to be that useful.
Yeah. And I'm not sure that it's great at, for people who want to get off the beaten path. I just don't think it's useful as a tool yet.
No, I totally agree. So we're going to have a quick layover before we head into the last stop. We're going to catch up with Tommy Wallach from Los Angeles, who is opening up a brand new immersive experience called The Ladder. Welcome, Tommy Wallach from Hatch Escapes. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. Folks, in the show notes, you can find an episode where we do a deep dive with Tommy on the history of escape rooms and some of the best escape rooms, because Tommy owns Hatch Escapes out there in Los Angeles, and they have a very popular escape room. Tell us a little bit about that before we jump into your new offering.
Sure. Yeah. So we opened a room in 2017 called Lab Rat. It's very silly. You play a group of test humans in a laboratory run by a sort of doctoral student rat who is studying human intelligence. So he's running you through tests, and the set kind of keeps with that theme. So it's a little, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, where you are humans in a giant cage with a giant human-sized water bottle that works just like a hamster bottle would, and a hamster wheel and a maze and all that stuff. And it was people seem to like it, which is great.
And you've been working on not really a sequel, but in the same building, another experience that sort of blends film and theater and immersive experiences and escape rooms into like one big experience. And it's called The Ladder. And, I was in LA probably like 2 years ago, and I saw sort of the beginnings of this, and it's opening very soon, if not open right now, as we're speaking, as this comes out. So when does it open?
It opens April 2nd, which is next Tuesday. So it's just a few days from now.
Yeah. So this episode comes out. It is open. So tell us a bit about The Ladder. What makes it different from just sort of any old escape room?
Sure. Well, we've been building it for a little over 5 years, which is just wild to think about on a bunch of different levels. Our goal was kind of to answer this question of replayability. One of the problems with escape rooms, and there are a few, but one of the problems with escape rooms is that if you go to one and you love it, there is no incentive to come back. And in fact, quite the opposite. Once you know how the game works, how the puzzles work, there's nothing for you to return. And it's a shame because people do want to come back often with friends. When they love something, they want to show it to other people, like you would with, a lot of other different kinds of entertainments. So that was in some ways like the origin of the concept. And what we came up with was this story where you're climbing the corporate ladder. My co-founder and I met writing musical theater as teenagers, and we kind of had How to Succeed in Business in our heads a little bit, if that means anything to your listeners. And the idea is it's your 50-year career at this vitamin company based in Omaha, Nebraska. So it takes place in a bunch of different rooms, but each room represents a decade from the 50s through to the 90s. And the replayability comes in a couple different ways. So the first one is it features a fully branching narrative. So you actually make choices throughout your game, and you get sort of more choices the better you do, or if you solve certain things. And so you get a different story, or at least you reveal different aspects of the story, depending on how you play. There are also in each room a series of games in addition to what people might think of as traditional escape room puzzles. So the puzzles, like all puzzles, once you know how to solve them, you know how to solve them. But in our rooms, those puzzles are incredibly difficult, and you don't have to solve them to move forward. You're moved along actually just based on how long you spend in the game. So about every 15 minutes, you're moved to the next decade. And instead, in each of the rooms, you can spend a lot of your time just playing games. And the games represent your job at this company. It's called NutriCorp, where you're just trying to make as much money as you can for the company. And those games are often themed around games people know. So there's a game that's a lot like skee ball, but that's when you're a middle manager and it's you out on the links taking your golf meeting. So you've got these scored games that are fun to play kind of infinitely. And the hope is, through those two methods and then a bunch of different endings, depending on how well you do and what you do, people are going to want to come back again and again to experience different parts of it.
And it's multimedia, right? There's a film element to it.
Yeah. So, a lot of escape rooms do have live actors. I'm personally a live actor skeptic, not because I don't love actors. I love actors very much, but
that's not true.
We need actors. The world needs actors.
We need actors.
But the trouble is, being honest, this is not a good gig for an actor. Being in an escape room, doing the exact same thing 8 times a day over and over again for a crowd of, potentially inebriated teenagers. It's not the best gig in the world. And because of that, you can't attract, world-class talent to this gig. It's just not going to happen.
You're not going to get Timothée Chalamet to do your escape room.
It's going to be tough. I don't know. It's not looking good I thought after Wonka, maybe we could get it, but after Dune 2. But what we can get here in LA in particular is you can get some pretty cool actors if you're filming them. So if they only have to do it once, you can really get some real folks who are professional actors. And we have that for the latter. So there's a few people in it that people might recognize. The lead is Jordan Belfi, who was a lead in Entourage. He was Johnny Drama's agent on Entourage, so maybe recognizable to people. Also in the room are Zelda Williams, who directed Lisa Frankenstein, that movie that just came out that Diablo Cody wrote, and she's a voiceover actress as well. And Tony Revolori, who I think most people know as the bellhop from the Grand Budapest Hotel, but he's also in the Spider-Man movies and a lot of other cool stuff. And again, because you only have to film them once and do the work there, we can get really great people. And you interact with them in the game sort of through screens that are attempting to make it feel as if they are really there with you in the space.
That's very cool. And that's super unique. I've done a lot of escape rooms and I really haven't seen anything like that. And I love immersive experiences. Kiernan's always given me a hard time for how much I talk about immersive experiences in the show. So when I heard that this was opening, I was super excited and I wanted to give our listeners a chance to check it out. So I'll let them know sort of how they can find Hatch Escapes and how they can find you.
So our website is www.hatchescapes.com. That's our company, Hatch Escapes. And when you're there, you can see our games. We also run another game that's quite famous in the immersive world called The Nest, which is a sort of 2-person emotional experience. And that's on there as well. So all our games over there.
Cool. So check out Hatch Escapes when you're in Los Angeles. Tommy, thanks for coming. And now it's time for the last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
So we're in the last stop. This has been a meaty episode. So Kieran, I think we need to jump into it, none of that endless banter. I saw an article.
Well, hold on, right?
What?
This is the final segment of the show, the last segment of the show. It's my favorite segment. It's your favorite segment. It's popularly known as the People segment. That's because it's a time where we come together to share one thing, but it must inspire the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week. So, Ryan, I want to ask you, as I ask you every week, you have the last stop this week.
So the Biden administration is planning to release a bunch of grizzly bears near a rural community in Washington.
Cornhusker 55, you better watch out.
Yeah. And people are not super excited about this. But these grizzlies need to live somewhere. And they are trying to figure out sort of what to do with them. The translocation of the grizzly bears into this new ecosystem is an experimental population designation. So
is that meaning trying to decrease the human population in the community by having them eaten by grizzly bears?
with a really funny quote, they say that releasing the apex predator in the region will improve social tolerance of the species.
That's funny.
It's really funny. So yeah, folks are up in arms. It's tough to, this is a park that they're releasing them in, North Cascades. Have you been out there, North Cascades? Not mentioned by ChatGPT.
No, I've been to, I wanted to go to North Cascades when I did my Pacific Northwest National Parks road trip. But there's very few accommodations up there and they were already booked out for the year.
And way too many grizzly bears at this point.
And now just a few more.
Overwhelmed. So, we've got a Fox News article, I think, linked in the show notes. You can hear these folks' complaints. Some of them are like, why are we prioritizing apex predators over elk and deer? And, I don't know. I don't know enough about grizzly bear management, but I did think it was an interesting story. And, it's one of our bear updates.
And of course, we have a great episode in the archives that local community should check out. It's about how to protect yourself from bear attacks.
Yeah,
link to that in the show notes.
Link in the show notes.
Also, Ryan, I noticed slipped in a little Fox News link there. That's for Cornhusker 55.
That's for Cornhusker 55. Yeah. I read Fox News. I just Googled it and I found it. But yeah.
Sure.
I always Google bear news. Got to be careful in Provincetown when you do that. Kiernan, what's your last stop this week?
Well, I'll tell you, this is a story I don't think has been covered on Fox News. And that's because it's about, and this is because of our boy Andres. I want to talk about a musical, Ryan. This is actually a follow-up. This could even be considered a recalculating.
Yeah.
It's a follow-up to the great Willy Wonka immersive experience disaster that we covered on a previous episode. Now there is a musical being developed about how insane it was that, this flim flam man used AI. It ties into a lot of stuff. We got the AI and the meat of the episode here in the last stop. It's about how they used AI to make it look like it was going to be this amazing Willy Wonka land, and then of course it was what the article in Hollywood Reporter describes like a meth lab. This is going to be a great musical because it carries on in the tradition of musicals like The Music Man, my favorite, where, you've got a charlatan coming in and tricking a community, trying to pull one over. And you know what? I bet at the end, this Willy Wonka is going to have a heart of gold. I just know it.
I think it's a great idea for a musical. I think it could be very, very funny.
Very funny.
Timothy Chalamet is available and can sing and should,
It's interesting you say that. There is some talk of a Wonka theatrical musical going on.
With Timothy?
Probably not with time. I don't think they could afford Timothy.
No, they probably can't afford Timothy after Dune 2. What are we talking about next week, Kiernan?
Ryan, I'm happy to say we are again in the middle of a trilogy of episodes. This is what's going to go down in history as the Fred Plotkin trilogy. So Fred Plotkin, of course, joined us a couple weeks ago. He originally caught my eye because he co-authored a book with Rick Steves called Italy for Food Lovers. And he really is the original reporter, journalist who covered gourmet food in every region across Italy. He wrote the definitive book in the 80s, has been updating it ever since. He's written, he and I debated it. We think it's 11 or 12 books about traveling in Italy. He lived in Italy extensively, currently lives in New York City, grew up in New York City. And I could talk to this man for hours. We're talking about a spin-off series, Out of Office, Fred Plotkin.
Whoa, that hurts.
Review of Your Duty, Ryan. I mean, I know, I can tell, you're joking around, but I could tell you're not loving how good the chemistry is between me and Fred. And so after our first conversation, I asked Fred to come back and for us to really just dig into a few regions that he feels very passionate about, which he feels are some of the great undiscovered travel regions and food destinations in Italy. So he talks us through those. And then what we pitched up is we're going to do a third eventual episode. We haven't gotten a time on the books yet where we're just going to dig in to the wine and espresso coffee culture of Italy.
Oh my gosh. I mean, this is, when I have Stanley Tucci on, he's not going to have anything to talk about.
Oh, have his people responded?
Yeah, his people are talking to my people.
They're considering.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
to your ChatGPT assistant. Ryan is still available.
And one thing we didn't mention at the top of the show was that we had a few audio issues the last episode, which is why we switched over to this new recording platform. And hopefully we solved all those.
Yes. And that was because of like a weird slight delay we were getting.
Yeah.
So we're abandoning cast. If you're an aspiring podcaster,
don't try cast, try cast.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan.
Well, until then,
you go first, Ryan.
Until then, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken. Do you have could you ask GPT, hey, can you ask ChatGPT for what a fourth episode with Fred Plotkin might be about?
I will definitely check in.